And welcome. This meeting of the Centennial School District Governing Board is called to order at 6:31 p.m. on June 20th, 2024, and a quorum is present. Welcome. It's good to see a couple faces in the room. It's one of the smaller meetings we've had in here in a while. Welcome to summer. Let's get through this. Let's do it. I don't know. Okay, so let's see here. The agenda has been distributed in board book. Are there any amendments needed?
Motion approved, agenda as presented.
Seconded.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Jess, are you a nay or an aye?
Give me a thumbs up, give me a thumbs down.
Can you hear me? He can't hear me.
Everyone's muted.
If I come off mute. I'm afraid if I come off mute. Paging Jess. Yeah. If I turn this.
Tell him to sign off and sign back on.
Jess.
Type it. Can you type it?
Please stick with us as we deal with technical difficulties. Hey, Jess, can you hear me now? Yes. Oh, he can.
You sound amazing.
Thank you.
You do.
I have a voice destined for stage, you're telling me?
So I'm telling you, future career, I promise.
Was that so Director Harden, we said that the agenda will run as distributed unless, do you have aye or nay?
Aye.
Sweet. The agenda will be posted as, will run as. I get these mixed up. Okay, approval of minutes.
Motion to approve as presented.
Seconded.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 The ayes have it. The minutes will run. Okay, there we go. The minutes will be formalized. There is no public forum that is applicable for work session meetings. Next up, we'll go straight to reports. Superintendent Owens, would you like to introduce the first report? The only report?
All right, we've got Director Southerton here with the budget adoption presentation. A lot of work has gone into the budget preparation, and he is here to show you the final result.
Wonderful. Thank you, Superintendent Owens. And I'll adjust my screen there. So be taking you through the budget for your consideration this evening of adopting it and moving forward for the next school year. We'll go through an overview of the budget process to date. I'll give you a brief updating on the funding outlook. We have one financial adjustment between the approved budget and the proposed adopted budget for this evening, so I'll be taking you through that. Provide a summary of the budget, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions and comments from the board, after which time we would go into, Chair Solowski would take us into a budget public hearing, and we would have opportunity for comment from the public. Later in new business is where a motion would be considered for adoption of the board. Oops. All right. So Centennial utilizes a participatory budget process. We gather district budget priorities in January through March of each year, which are established by the school board, and community, as well as the budget committee at the work session. Based on these priorities, the administration drafted the proposed budget and presented that to the committee in April. The committee provided us feedback, made recommendation, and asked great questions. Based on that feedback, The committee was presented with a revised budget in May, which they approved, as well as approving the budget tax rate and bond collection amount. And then this evening, it's before the board for formal approval and adoption of the budget. Funding outlook for Oregon, as we all are likely aware, you'll recall, funding for schools in Oregon continues to be inadequate. While Centennial is in better financial position than many, and than we have been in the recent past, inadequate funding requires the district to depend on reserves, grants, and other funding to maintain current service levels. You'll notice in this adopted budget that continues again for this year, that will be deficit spending just to maintain current service levels. We're hopeful that the governor's commitment to evaluate school funding in the next legislative session will result in improved funding for Oregon students. Centennial, like the majority of Oregon school districts, has roll-up costs of about 6% or more each year, meaning to maintain the same services for students from one year to the next with no additions, we need approximately 6% more in funding each year. Accordingly, Centennial will be advocating for the state school fund of no less than $11.35 billion next biennium, in addition to fully funding special education by removing the 11% enrollment cap and fully reimbursing school districts for high-cost disability expenses. Failure to meet these funding requirements could result or will result in service level reductions for the 2025-2026 school year in Centennial. So it's very important that Oregon adequately funds schools. As I mentioned in my opening comments, we do have one financial adjustment from the approved budget to the adopted budget before you for consideration this evening. That adjustment is $300,000 moving from contingency for potential unplanned expenses. You'll recall that during our budget work session and during the first and second budget committee, we had allocated contingency funds for unplanned expenses because our bargaining and collective bargaining agreements had not been settled. And so we knew it was a possibility that we would end up settling it slightly more than what was in the budget. And in fact, we did so. So we need to move $300,000 from contingencies for potential unplanned expenses into the two functions where the majority of classified employees are housed in the budget, and that's function 2410 and 1250, so $150,000 in each of those functions. Again, we knew this was a possibility, and that's why we had that secondary contingency amount in the budget, but we need to be transparent and call out that change, and that change is reflected in the budget before you for approval and adoption tonight. In the budget, this is what it looks like. So instruction would be increased by $150,000. So it would go from $49,331,434 to $49,481,434. And then support services would equally be increased by $150,000. So it would go from $30,564,228 to $30,714,228. $300,000 would be deducted from the unplanned expenses column. And so overall, the total ending fund balance would not be impacted. The proposed or the forecasted ending fund balance would remain at that $15,419,770. And the total overall requirements remain the same. And that concludes the financial adjustments. So in summary, the proposed 2024-2025 Centennial School budget is very much a student-focused budget. It supports the district's strategic plan, Roadmap 27, supports priorities of the community and the budget committee, maintains the majority of current service levels for students, continues the investments in lower class sizes that have been made in recent years, leverages funds to support all learners, including special education and learners that benefit from a non-traditional learning environment, such as Centennial Virtual Academy, and continues our investment in co-curricular activities and student leadership opportunities. It invests in improving school safety and learning environments for students as well. Informed by the Centennial Budget Committee, as well as Centennial community, staff, and students through ongoing strategic plan engagement and implementation sessions, the administration respectfully submits for your consideration the 2024-2025 Centennial School District budget as amended to a total of $162,602,741, including the general fund budget in the amount of $96,660,660, and all other fund budgets in the amounts of $65,728,081. The proposed general fund permanent tax rate is $4.7448 per thousand of assessed value, and the proposed tax levy is $4,076,474 for 2024-2025 bonded general obligation debt payments. That was an awful lot of information, but most of it a repeat of what was shared during the Budget Committee meetings and process. I welcome questions and comments from the board.
Thank you very much. Are there any? Please, Director Andrews.
So Director Southerton, I reviewed the April financials that were in the board packet, and as of the end of April, the balance in the general fund is $36 million. And the budget forecast that we're gonna end the year at $18 million. Do you still think it's gonna be $18 million, and why?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And so to answer that, I need to kind of walk through the cash flow of school districts in Oregon. And so what happens is the state school fund allocation that we receive is not received by the district equally each month. We receive a double payment of our state school fund in July at the beginning of each school year, and then an equal payment for the subsequent 10 months, and no cash flow, no revenue in June from the state school fund allocation. And they do that because they understand that school districts essentially have 3 payrolls in June. We're accruing salaries for staff that doesn't work during the summer, and they get a June paycheck as well as what we've accrued a portion of their paycheck all year long, so that they have salary to take them through the summer. They end up essentially with 3 paychecks in June. So where you've noticed on our monthly cash flow statements, our average monthly expenses are around $6 million to $6.5 million per month. What you'll see in June is nearly triple that, so in the neighborhood of $18 million. And you'll see no revenue coming in because we will not receive a state school fund payment in June because our state school fund has already been paid out in July through May of each year. So yes, school districts carry a higher fund balance because we're essentially pre-funded by the state school fund each month, and then at the end of the year it all kind of comes home. And if you don't have that fund balance, you know, you get into trouble like some of our neighboring school districts have seen. So to walk you through the process, yes, we had approximately $36 million in the general fund at the end of April. I expect we'll have less than that in May because we are slightly cash flow negative each month. We'll receive about $5.5 million in, and we'll have about $6.5 million in expenses. So it'll take it down to the neighborhood of 35 or 34, 500,000, and then in June, we'll have those $18 million worth of payments, and that's going to take us down to
No receipts?
plus no receipts in June, right? And so that'll take us down to the about $18 million that we're forecasting as our beginning fund budget balance for next year. Yeah, so it's essentially kind of a landslide model, if you will, of expenses that all come home to roost at the end of the year, and if you don't budget accordingly, yeah, that's how we get in trouble. But it's an excellent question because, you know, you're receiving a very timely report, right? We just closed the books on that month, you know, 6 weeks ago, and now you're saying, well, wait a second, you're saying 18 million, but this says 36 million. So I appreciate you asking that question and allowing the opportunity to kind of share from a cash flow basis how that happens in school districts. Now, other districts sometimes, and I think Portland Public may be one of these, where they pay their teachers in June, and then you get another check in July, and you get another check in August, and they don't do the accrual method, right? We do the accrual method, where we're holding back a little bit each month and then paying them all in June. So, you know, it could be a different opportunity. It could be an opportunity to look at that in the future. I don't know that one is necessarily better than the other.
That was my follow-up question, is there a future plan to look at paying monthly versus 3 in June? Just what would members prefer versus not? It's hard to budget when you're getting all of your paychecks in 1 month
Right.
versus getting them monthly. So I was just curious if that could in the future affect how some of that is laid out.
Yeah, I would say there, from a business office standpoint, there is an opportunity for us to look at that and change that. It would be more of an HR standpoint and Dr. Katsuda's wheelhouse and Superintendent Owens to engage with our union partners and see, what do members prefer? And how would you prepare for such a change? Because it may be a pretty big change. I don't want to speak out of pocket on that. I'm not sure if it's contract or practice. I'm happy to look at that and then get back to you.
Yeah, personally, for speaking for me, it's not in our contract. It is just a way the practice is. PPS used to do the same practice, switched over numerous years ago so that we have an earned not paid column in our paycheck. So I earn that money, but that money is not paid out. So I get a paycheck 12 months instead of 10 months a year. So it's just a problem of practice. You just decide. It doesn't have to be bargained. It can, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Well, if everybody's asked their questions, I'll go.
Director Harding, do you have any questions?
No questions, but I do want to thank the Budget Committee for their time and their engagement in the process and for the outpouring of questions and the energy they put into it.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Shields, do you have any questions?
I'm good.
Back over to Director Andrews.
Could you go back a couple of slides? The one talked about the state funding. So when you say, removing the 11% enrollment cap there in that middle paragraph, and fully reimbursing school districts for high-cost disability expenses, are those two separate issues?
Yes.
Okay. So I read recently that Open Door, is that the name of the, I know that Denise isn't here, but.
Open school.
Yeah, maybe that's it, that where some of our students attend, that they're having funding problems. And is that because of this fully reimbursing school districts for high-cost disability expenses, or is that something
I
else?
think you're talking about Rosemary Anderson East.
No, it's open something.
Okay.
Meadows? No.
Open,
Open school.
Open school, you're talking about open school? That's an organization, Open Schools, could be what you're referring to.
It's one of the ones I know. If Denise were here, she would know which one it is. And I know it's one that's on our list. I don't know if we have any students
Open
with.
School East.
Yeah,
was
open
an
school
article
is
today
on
in
our
the
list,
Oregon.
and
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if it was today or yesterday.
so
It must have been today.
if it's one of the ones that's on our list, it would be open school.
They're laying off 6 teachers. So you don't know, though, probably, if that is as a result of this issue, fully reimbursing school districts for high disability costs, or what. I couldn't glean enough. Obviously, you've got the article open, you're looking over it, but I know that it's on our list of approved schools where we can send students. I don't know if we have any students who attend, but anyway, it's something that we need to be, I think, concerned about if we do have students attending that school.
I would say directly or indirectly, this issue affects all public education in Oregon. Because what ends up happening is our expenses far exceed the funding for the students. The expenses to provide education that we're legally required to provide to these students, and we do, the cost of that far exceeds what we're reimbursed and what we're funded for. So that comes at an expense of something else, right? And if you can't pull from something else, or you pulled from something else so far that there's nothing left to pull from, you end up with making the terrible decisions that it sounds like they're having to make. So directly or indirectly, this is, a major issue for all Oregon public school districts, and that's why there's a lot of unity in advocating to support school districts providing these much needed services for the students that we're legally and morally, ethically required to provide services for, right?
Okay.
So please fund us.
Okay. it helped to know that those two issues are different, but they're both necessary for us to get on more stable financial footing.
Correct, yeah. There's a cap currently on the proportion of students or the percentage of students that they'll provide that extra weighting for in your allocation. And there's also, for lack of a better term, a hole in the funding that for high-cost disability. They fund you up to a certain point for that double weight, and then they don't fund you until you exceed $30,000 or more for an individual student. And even then, they only partially fund you on that, on the dollars over the 30,000. This year it was 49% of the actual cost. So we're on the hook for a big chunk in the middle, and then on the back end, they're only reimbursing half of the high cost. So, and again, like, these are services that we need to provide for students. We do provide for students in Centennial, and also we're asking for is to be funded.
All right, thank you.
Can I, before you go in, I had a question on that with that 11%. Do we have any idea where we currently stand with our percentage of students?
Currently between 15 and 16% is
Great.
my
Thank you.
recollection of numbers. Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's pretty typical for the state of Oregon. I think statewide we're at 14.5 or 15%. So it is a statewide issue.
Well, I have heard that it's maybe more of a metropolitan issue than it is a rural issue. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I have heard that there's kind of a rural city divide on this particular issue. So we need to be aware of that, if that is the case. If rural school districts can live within this 11% cap, they're not gonna wanna see money coming to districts like ours at their loss.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point. I'm happy to look into that. So overall, you know, the average can be different than the mean, right? Or
Right.
something else,
Right.
right? So
Right.
we can go and look at that and see.
We
You may-
need to be aware if that's gonna be an issue.
Certainly.
So, because I don't, well, anyway.
And we know that in our district in particular, we have folks moving in because services are provided not only by our district, but by community partners and other services out here as well. And so that might be a reason why, you know,
They're
it's-
closer to services,
yeah.
I mean, just all kinds of things.
so then, you know, it would make sense that more money would be coming to districts that are, you know, higher percentages because they're, you know, they're relieving the burden maybe of other areas. So, but that is not a business office area of expertise, so I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Sutherland.
I just wanted to offer a response to Director Stanley's question. The 3 checks in June is a feature of the license contract. I'm not seeing it in the OSCA contract, not to say it's not there.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. Thank you. I'll be more formal.
You're welcome, Director Stanley.
Okay, are there any more questions here before I open it to the public?
No more.
Okay.
Sorry.
At this time, the board will recess to meet for the 2024-2025 budget hearing. The regular board meeting will resume after this hearing. Do I have to do that too? Are there any members of the public who would like to submit testimony or comments? Is there anybody even? No. Okay. Nobody. Is there anybody even out there? All right. Board deliberation. Is there anything that anybody needs to?
Nothing new that hasn't already been
Yeah.
addressed.
Excellent, then we will go ahead and close the hearing. The regular board meeting will now resume,
Wonderful.
and we will talk about this later in new business. Thank you. All right, next up, we've got some confirmation items.
Move to approve confirmation items as listed in agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 I
Noted.
The ayes have it. We'll go ahead and move along to board action items. Like this time, there's no old business, so we will jump right into new business.
Welcome back.
Welcome,
Enjoyed
Director Southerton.
Your brief reprieve or break. Um, Wonderful. So the Budget Committee has approved the 2024-25 budget. The public hearing on the Budget Committee was just held today at 6:50 p.m., June 20th, 2024. The budget should be adopted according to the attached resolution in Board Book. Along with adopting the budget, the board needs to appropriate the dollar expenditure limits for each fund by major function, including instruction, support services, etc. Appropriations are the authorization granted by the board to make expenditures and to incur obligations for specific purposes for a single fiscal year. The district cannot exceed those appropriation levels. The appropriation level is the board's legal level of control, and a board action is required to amend the appropriation. Appropriations are made for 1 year and will expire June 30th, 2025. The board must declare the ad valorem property tax levy amount by resolution. The tax levy is categorized as either being under the educational limit or excluded from the limitation. Taxes excluded from the limitation are deposited in the debt service fund for repayment of the district's general application bonded debt. Taxes collected under the educational limit are deposited into the general fund. We are requesting the ad valorem property tax levy under the educational limit to be deposited in the general fund. It is recommended that the board adopt the 2024-2025 budget, appropriate funds for the 2024-2025 year, and categorize and levy ad valorem taxes as presented in Board Book. I welcome any questions you may have.
Questions? Yes.
Motion to approve the recommended budget as presented, and we adopt the 2024-2025 budget appropriated funds and categorized and levy ad valorem taxes as presented.
Seconded.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Congratulations, we have passed the budget. Do I need
Thank you
to
very much.
read the, be it resolved? No, okay.
Consider it read.
Done. Fantastic. The next and final item up on our new business is the collective bargaining agreement.
All right, we have Dr. Katsuda here, who is going to share with us a little bit about the collective bargaining agreement that was agreed upon by OSEA and Centennial School District leadership. I will just go ahead and turn it over to her.
Great, thank you. So what you'll see uploaded in Board Book is the almost completed draft of the bargaining agreement. It'll be formatted and look a lot prettier when it's done, but it includes the main significant components. We still have legal to finish the final review of it before we polish it up there. And it's recommended that the board approve the contract agreement between Centennial School District and OSCA Chapter 113 for the 27 school years.
Thank you very much. At this point, are there any questions, comments from the board? I'd love to entertain a motion.
Move to approve the contract agreement between Centennial School District and OSCA Chapter 113 employees for the 2024 to 2027 school years.
I second it.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 The ayes have it. We have now, yeah,
Great bargaining experience and team.
very good job. Really well done. Thank you. At this time, let's entertain any future agenda items.
I have some when you're ready. The Surgeon General is coming out with a warning on social media, and it's gonna gain some traction, obviously, from having somebody as prominent as that, bringing it to the attention of the nation. I've had concerns and discussions with other board members about even things like cell phone usage, that we've also been hearing about, that's been going on. School districts considering, and individual schools considering policies related to the use of cell phones during the day. I'd like to see us take this up and learn more about it, learn what kind of impact it has on our students throughout the district, and whether or not our policies adequately cover what we need to be doing to protect our students, based on maybe the Surgeon General's information and what other, whether it be cities, counties, or even states are doing as it relates to this.
Thank you, Vice Chair Shields. Any other future agenda items, please? Director
I
Stanley?
would like to continue to move forward with a board self-reflection and team reflection and sort of assessment of how we have operated over the past year, whether for this year or not, I understand to table, but do not want it to fall off the.
I appreciate you bringing that back up again. It is on our agenda for our August retreat.
Great, thank you very much.
Yep. Anything else?
What we have slated for July, that'll be our first meeting of the new fiscal year. We will have the election of officers for chair and vice chair. We have a standard slate of business items that normally come to the board this time of year in terms of designating banks and who the asbestos hazard emergency response individual will be, and our legal counsel and so forth, so expect to see those. And then also, we intend to bring forward the enterprise zoning HB 2009 piece that we had talked about previously, and so expect that to see that as well.
Will we know more about what other school districts are doing in that area by then?
Yeah, and I would say that there's alignment across the East County, and there's been intentional efforts with school districts and also with business councils to establish some commonality that way. Yeah. And to save the suspense, the trend is to the 15% across the board.
Great. Anything else?
I have a tentative list of August board retreat agenda items, but I don't know, Chair, if you want to wait until the July board meeting to look ahead to that one or not.
Would anybody be interested in looking at that now?
Now, please.
Great.
Okay, great. So what we have tentatively worked with board leadership is team building activity, reviewing board operating agreements. And in that board operating agreements, there can be a consideration of a board self-assessment. We do have some board agenda items with respect to how the board wants to deal with student recognitions at board meetings, whether you would like to see a continuation of school reports, and then also potentially cell phone use in schools, as Director Vice Chair Shields had brought up. A preview of Roadmap 27 Year 2 priorities, a draft of my work plan, and then a look at any board committee or representation assignments as well.
Could we also discuss at the board retreat how coffees and
Yeah.
the informal meetings will go? As a full-time employee, that's hard during the day.
Yeah, sounds
Cool.
good.
Thanks. Agreed.
Would it be appropriate to talk about the upcoming legislative session at the retreat, or at other times to talk about it?
You know, I think we can potentially hold space for that. I know that we're not going for a full day, we're doing
Right.
a shorter session, and so,
We always go over it.
Yeah.
So we don't want to pack the agenda or we just be frustrated at finding anything.
yeah. It might be,
Future.
Yeah.
Meeting topic?
yeah, noted on the list.
And to verify, that's August 1st, yes?
August 3rd?
Thursday, August 1st,
First,
from
yeah.
9 to 3 is what we have.
And I'm sorry, one more interjection. What is the July board meeting date, please?
Yeah, no problem. We have Wednesday, July 10th.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. This meeting is adjourned. We will take maybe, go ahead, take a few minutes for board members to stretch their legs, and we'll come back in 4 minutes for the executive session.